Welcome! My name's Z, and I'm your host for the Framework Developer Bootcamp. This show is for people who want to become web or mobile developers. Really, anyone who wants to learn programming will learn about new technologies and coding techniques each show. My goal for this show is to give you a taste of the kind of work developers do, and the tools we use for every project. In this session, I'll give you an introduction to programming with JavaScript. JavaScript is a popular programming language not because of its simplicity nor its elegant syntax, which is neither. JavaScript is popular because it's the only programming language supported by web browsers, i.e. Safari, Chrome, Firefox, etc. With the introduction of Node.js, JavaScript can also be used on the server as well. Today, we'll go over some basics of JavaScript, such as assignments, conditions, loops, functions. We'll conclude with the creation of a simple script. The script will output the factorial of any given number. Just as a reminder, the factorial of a number is the product of the number and all of the numbers smaller than it, but greater than 0. For example, the factorial of 5 is 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. To ensure compatibility, we'll be running all the examples on C9, a cloud-based web development platform. During each episode of Framework, I'll be inviting you to follow along with me. As you're watching, don't be afraid to pause the video or watch it more than once, so you can enter the code or type in the commands right along with me. Thanks for watching Framework. Let's get started. Once you've logged into C9, go ahead and click Create New Workspace. For the project name, I'm going to give it JS Basics. And you could leave the description blank. We're going to pick public. And a blank template. Then click Create Workspace. Okay, so once this workspace is created, the first thing we're going to do is to check the Node version. So the Node engine is what we're going to be using to run our JavaScript today. So to check the Node version, we're going to type in node -- version. So notice here that we're using version 6.11. So if yours comes out different, we could get 6.11 by using nvm install. And nvm is Node Version Manager. So nvm install 6.11.2. So since I have 6.11.2, I'm not going to install it. Okay, and we're going to fire up the interactive shell by typing in node. Now, we can type in some JavaScript. The first thing we're going to do is to take a look at the console.log function. So we could type console.log hello world. So it prints out hello world. So that's basically prints out, it's similar to a print function in Python and Ruby and many other languages. So all it does is it takes in a string and it prints it out. So the next thing we're going to do is assignment. We're going to define a variable by using the var keyword, specify the name, and then equal. And then we can assign it either a value or a string. Here we're going to do 5. And now x is 5. We can also assign strings such as var y is equal to hello. The next thing we're going to do is arithmetic. We could do arithmetic like many other languages by using the plus, minus, divide, and multiply symbol. So to do addition, we could do 3 plus 5, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So the next thing we're going to cover are loops. There are two types of loops. There's a while loop and there's a for loop. So this is what a while loop looks like. So we could define, let's say, x to be 5. And then we'll write a while loop that prints x a couple times as we decrement it. So if x is greater than 0, we're going to console.log x, and we're also going to subtract 1 from x. close this. And this is a while loop. We can also use a for loop for this. For example, for var x is equal to 5. If x is greater than 0, x minus minus. And then we're just going to print it. And we could type this all in one line. So in case you haven't seen a for loop before, this is actually the same syntax as languages such as C# and Java. So here, when we start this loop, we run this statement, which is assigning 5 to x. As long as this condition satisfies, we're going to keep executing this statement. And at the end of every iteration, we're going to apply this statement. So here we're assigning 5 to x. We check to see if x is greater than 0. If x is greater than 0, we're going to print this. And then we're going to subtract 1. X minus minus is the same as x equals x minus 1. Okay, so we're just going to subtract 1 from x. And then we're going to check this condition again. If it's still greater than 0, we're going to print this and do this and check condition until this condition doesn't satisfy. And then we're moving on. So if we run this, we get the same thing. 5 to 1. So the next thing we're going to look at is if statement. Like many other languages, we just type if and put a condition in the parentheses. Here we're just going to put true there. And if true, we're going to log yes. And if it's false, we're going to put no. Or rather, if false, nothing's getting printed. And the last thing we're going to do is to put together a function. So to write a function in JavaScript, we could type in function. Let's use the function to check if a number is 0, for example. So function is 0. And then we're going to take in a input. And then we could say if input is 0, we're going to log yes. Otherwise, we could put no. And then we're going to close this function with an end curly brace. So now we could call this function, for example, is 0, 10, no. Is 0, 5, no. So it's 0, 0. Yes, okay. So to exit the console, we could type .exit. So now you know some basics of JavaScript. Let's put something together. So we'll create a JavaScript file by typing touch. We're going to create a factorial function here. So touch factorial.js to create a factorial file. Alternatively, you could right-click here in the file browser and then click new file here. So we're going to open it up. We're going to define a function called factorial, which is going to accept an input called input. Then we're going to create an empty placeholder, a variable called result. We're not going to assign anything to it yet. So next, we're going to use a for loop to do the factorial. And you'll see very soon why. So for result is equal to input minus minus. Input is greater than 0. Input minus minus. Oh. Okay, so here, what we're doing is we're assigning the input to result first. So when we put minus minus behind in variable, we're actually executing the operation first and then taking 1 away from it. So here, we're assigning input to result, and then we're subtracting 1 from it. And then if input is still greater than 0, we're going to multiply those two together. So for instance, if we're a 5 here, so 5 is going to get assigned to result. And then this input holding a 5 right now is going to be 4. So 4 is greater than 0, so we go into this for loop block where 4 is multiplied by 5. And this is really just a shorthand for result, as you go to result times input. These two lines are the exact same thing. This is just an easier way of writing it. So once we have 4 times 5, and that's stored in the result, we go to this part, which is going to take 1 from the input, which is going to give it 3. And the 3 is still greater than 0, so we're going to use 3 times 4 times 5. And it keeps going until input is at 0. So after we do that, we can return it by typing in return result. And that's going to give us a result. But that's not all. There are 2 more things we need to do. We need to check the input. We need to check to make sure that the input is an integer. And to do that, we could type parse int input. Now, this is just a JavaScript way, a trick in JavaScript to check whether a variable is an integer. So if it is an integer, when we put it into parse int, it's still going to be itself. Otherwise, it's going to be something different. So if this is true, it's going to tell us that input is an integer. So if it is an integer, but here we want to say if it's not an integer, so we put an exclamation mark in front of it to flip it. So if it's not an integer, we're going to stop this function by writing return. And then we're going to also print something to the console. We're going to print the input is not valid. Input must be an integer. To let the user know that the user must put in an integer. There's another condition we must check. We must check that the input is greater than 0, because we can't take a factorial of 0 or negative. So to do that, we could do if input is greater than 0. And since we want to check that input is not greater than 0, we could surround this by parentheses and put exclamation mark. So this is saying if input is not greater than 0, we have to return it. Return a function to terminate it and print must be greater than 0. Missed a close parentheses here. Then, lastly, we're going to need to export this factorial function in order to use it from the outside. So to export it, we're going to type in module exports factorial. So you go to factorial. And now we can access this function from outside this file. So to check it out, in the terminal, we're going to type node. And then we're going to type var to define a variable called fact. And then we're going to assign this module to it by using require. And then the path, which here is factorial. So this is basically the name of the file here, without the .js at the end. Okay, so now we could try it. So factorial, 3, and this should get us 3 times 2 times 1, which is 6. And there it is. We can also try 10 if you want, or 100, which is going to get too big. So that's it. In this session, you learn the basics of JavaScript: assignments, loops, conditions, and functions. You also build a simple program in JavaScript that takes in a number and outputs its factorial. JavaScript is a popular language that is also ubiquitous. Regardless of whether you're becoming a web developer or mobile developer, you're likely to encounter and require JavaScript at some point in your career, and you have just taken the first step toward the mastery of this language. If you enjoy this show, why not give the Framework Professional Developer Program a shot? We help you become a professional developer in as little as 20 weeks. Our program is online, but everyone in the program has their own instructor, so your questions are always answered. You can try the program for free. Just sign up at learntoprogram.tv/p/try-framework. See you next time.